All right, so today we're diving into supply chain management. It's one of those fields blowing up right now, and for good reason.
It really is. And it's about so much more than just logistics, which is, I think, where a lot of people go first.
Oh, yeah, it's way more dynamic, talking about basically orchestrating this whole journey of a product, like from raw materials to when you get that perfectly timed Amazon delivery.
Exactly. And speaking of Amazon, they're a great example of how technology is changing supply chains so much. Like, remember the days when you had to actually go to a store and wait in line?
Ugh.
Now it's all supply chain managers who are on the front lines of AI and automation and even predictive analytics to make those lightning fast deliveries happen.
And that's thinking ahead. I like it. And you shared RoleCatcher's career guide on supply chain management, and they actually break down the role in a really fascinating way. So let's kind of unpack these 5 core responsibilities they highlight, starting with planning and coordination.
Okay, so imagine this. You're coordinating with suppliers worldwide, and each of these suppliers is like a complex operation in and of itself. It's like being a conductor, right, where you're bringing together all these instruments, or in this case, all these resources to create this cohesive, product symphony.
Okay, so you need to be organized like a symphony conductor, but then there's the whole sourcing of the materials, which I imagine is another whole challenge in itself.
It is, yeah. You're not just looking for the cheapest option, right? You're considering quality, you're thinking about reliability, ethical source. It's a lot to balance. And then that brings us to the third core responsibility, which is distribution.
Getting those products to all the right places at the right time, which has got to be harder than it sounds, right? Especially when you're dealing with the entire world as your, I don't know, your playground.
Absolutely. It's all about optimizing your routes, figuring out the transportation, maybe even using multiple distribution centers.
Mm.
And then, we can't forget about production management. That's the fourth core responsibility we've got here.
Right, because if you don't have a smooth production process, the whole chain just breaks down.
Exactly. So that means overseeing manufacturing, making sure that quality control is happening, and just making sure everything is running smoothly.
Smoothly, like a well-oiled machine. But even the most well-oiled machine has to, be able to adapt. And that brings us to kind of the fifth and maybe the most critical responsibility today, adapting to those demand fluctuations.
And this is where things get really, really interesting. Remember we were talking about that Amazon effect earlier. Well, consumer demand can change. That snaps fingers. And a good supply chain manager needs to be agile enough to adjust.
So you're not just reacting to changes, you're anticipating them,
Hmm.
using data to forecast trends and then making split-second decisions to keep, the shelves stocked and the customers happy.
Yeah, it can definitely be intense.
It sounds pretty intense.
It can be, but that's also what makes it exciting. Because there's never really a dull moment when you're the one responsible for keeping those wheels of commerce turning.
Okay, so we've talked about this fast-paced, high-stakes world of being a supply chain manager, but what about the skills you actually need to, thrive? I'm guessing it's kind of a mix of everything, right?
Yeah, you're not wrong. RoleCatcher's guide actually dives into this, and it's pretty interesting. They point out that it's not just about, being a numbers person, although that's definitely a part of it. Strong analytical skills, problem solving, those are key. They actually ranked complex problem solving at 57% importance.
Yeah, 57%. So you really have to be able to look at a ton of data, find those bottlenecks and come up with solutions on the spot. But you're right, it's got to be more than just being a spreadsheet whiz.
Oh, absolutely. Because remember, you're dealing with people every step of the way, right? Suppliers, production teams, logistics, even people inside your company. So that's where those soft skills come in. Things like active listening and communication, being a good negotiator.
So it's almost like they have to be a conductor, but also a diplomat and a strategist and a master communicator all at the same time.
Exactly. And you know what else? The guide also talks about how important it is to never stop learning. They suggest going to conferences, keeping up with all the latest industry news and trends, even getting certifications.
It's always changing, right? New technology, new approaches. It's you always have to be learning something new. They actually even had a whole list of certifications that they said could give you an edge. You were telling me about some of them earlier, like certified supply chain professional or the one for supply management.
Right, exactly. Those can be really important, especially when you're, up against other people for a job. But it's more than just having the right piece of paper. It's about being the kind of person who wants to learn and grow and always have the best, most up-to-date skills and knowledge.
So let's say you've got the skills, you're into the field. What does the career path actually look like? I know RoleCatcher's guide outlines a few different stages, starting with like the junior analyst position. So what's that like day to day as a junior analyst?
So imagine this. You're just out of school, you're ready to get to work, and you land that entry-level junior analyst job. You're going to be doing a lot of data analysis, probably, looking at numbers, getting a feel for how things work day to day. You might be tracking shipments or figuring out inventory levels, or even like trying to find places where things could be improved. It's all about like building that base level knowledge.
Okay, so you're learning the ropes, getting really good with the data. Then what? What's the next step up?
Usually that would be the supply chain coordinator role. This is where you start getting, more responsibility. You're managing those processes from beginning to end. So like all the way from getting the materials to actually like getting those deliveries coordinated. And you
Yeah.
get to really work on those supplier relationships, building connections with those key players.
So you're going from like just looking at data to actually doing more of the work,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And each step up is like, you gain experience, you meet people, you get better at leading, which are all super important for moving up.
Which brings us to the top, the supply chain manager.
This is it. This is where everything comes together. You're leading a team, coming up with those big picture strategies, making the whole supply chain work better and cost less. Basically, you're steering the ship, making sure everything's running smoothly and dealing with, any problems that come up along the way.
So you've worked your way up. You're the one making the decisions now. But it's not really about like titles, is it? It's more about the impact you have, right?
Right, and that's what's so cool about it. Think about just how big of a scale these folks work on. They're literally shaping how stuff moves around the entire world, influencing economies, even like impacting what we experience as consumers every day.
It's true. They're kind of like the force you don't see that's behind like everything we use and touch.
Exactly. And a well-run supply chain can make or break a product launch. It's not just about the product, though. It's also about a company's, well, everything, their profits, their impact on the environment, even their reputation.
And with everyone talking about like sustainability and ethical sourcing these days, doesn't that make this role even more important?
Totally. They're the ones figuring out how to make those supply chains better for the planet, more adaptable, and, more in line with what people actually care about.
This whole deep dive has been really eye-opening, and honestly, Rollcatcher's Guide was super helpful, don't you think?
For sure. Yeah, it gave us a really good look at how everything works in this field. We saw the core responsibilities, the skills you need, the different career paths you can take. It's all right there.
It really makes you think, that's for sure. But there's one more thing I think is super important for anyone listening who's thinking about, actually doing this for a living.
Look at that.
We've talked a lot about the what, the day-to-day, the skills, all that. But what about the why? Like, why do this at all?
Oh, that's a great point. You have to know why you're doing it. What gets you excited about this? Do you want to change the game, make things more sustainable, or maybe just, get a kick out of knowing you're a part of this huge global system?
Yeah, those are good questions to ask yourself. So, to everyone listening, as you explore the world of supply chain management, remember it's more than just like moving boxes around,
Mhm.
right? It's about making connections, solving puzzles, and really like being a part of how the world works now and in the future.